Hi, I'm Rachel and I'm going to make a rubber-soled sandal making video here. I'm in a kitchen in a hotel in Seaview, Washington. It's called the Sou'wester, and there's lots of vintage trailers and things around, and it's one of my favorite places. So I thought it'd be fun to bring my kit here and show you that you can make sandals anywhere you go. With just the things that come in the kit and a few extra items. And yeah, that's why I'm here in a kitchen somewhere else outside my studio. So I will show you all the tools and materials next. Okay, so I want to show you everything that comes in the kit. I have this instruction booklet and a few different pages of patterns, so different suggestions for sole shapes and all the different sizes, some toe strap shapes and some ankle strap shapes, and then about 2 square feet of upper leather. This is 4 or 5 ounce latigo, so it's the right weight for uppers, all the straps on the top of the foot. And latigo leather is so great because it ages really well. It can kind of change with time and stretch if you need it to, but it doesn't have too much stretch in it. And then this is just a piece of leather that I'll use for the footbed. So the 2 sole shapes that I will stand on top of. And then rubber for the outsoling. So the textured side goes on the bottom and the flat side adheres to the upper of the shoe that you build. And it's a big enough rectangle to get a right and a left. And then tool-wise, it has a rotary hole punch, so lots of different hole settings, a utility knife, a scratch-all, a pen in a contrasting color to the leather that comes with your kit, round leather laces if you choose a style that requires shoelaces, and little screwback studs that's like a kind of hardware that you can use instead of a buckle, and I really like the studs. And then lastly, some shoe glue. And when you make rubber-soled sandals, it'll require a solvent-based shoe glue. So that's what we're going to use for this. And yeah, that's everything. Okay, so these are the things that do not come in the kit. A cutting surface, because you're going to want to cut against something and not harm your tabletop. Some paper for altering patterns, masking tape, pencil, straight edge, a hammer, and a scissors. And I like really sharp scissors, like fabric shears or something for cutting leather, and a hammer. Any hammer will work, but I like when the flat side is sort of soft, so when you're hitting the sandal and connecting all the layers, you don't dent the leather too badly. So these are all things you should easily be able to find in your home. That's why they're not in the kit, and I hope you can find these things to work on your sandals. Okay, so today I want to make this sandal called a toe loop sandal. So I'm going to cut out this piece for the big toe loop, and then I might use this wide strap that's normally used for a toe strap for the main strap of my sandal. Or perhaps I'll use this really wide one and cut it down to size. So I'll cut out both and see what looks best on my foot. Alright, so I cut out the wide sole shape template just to show all the different sizes, and I'm standing so that there's probably like a 1/2 inch behind my heel here just to give myself a little room there. And then looking at my toes, I would probably cut down to the 8.5 line just to be on the generous side, because I'm going to give a little bit of shape curve to the sole once I make it, and then you lose a little bit of length then. So it's just always best to err on the roomier side, and you can always cut it down later. So I will do that right now. So this side of the sole is marked L for left, and that means this flip side is good for the right sole. So I'm going to check it out on my right foot, and it does look like a little bit bigger than I might need, but I like that I have that extra space. So about an extra 1/2 inch in the toe and 3/8 or 1/2 inch around the heel. So I'm going to keep it. And then those other pattern pieces, I cut out this little strip for the toe loop. These dotted lines are supposed to serve as folding lines. So I'll try that and that. And the way this works is one side tucks under the toe and the other side flips out and tucks under the other toes so that they all land in their own space. So that will be something like that. And then I cut out both that skinny toe strap and this really wide one. And let's just see. This could work, but to me it just looks a little bit lightweight. So I want to go for a thicker style, and I'm not going to bother cutting out these darts. I might just keep it solid. So the beauty of this toe loop style is that it allows space at the widest part of your toes for flexibility, and then it comes back kind of far on your foot to give you some stability there. I think it's a little wider than I need, so I might trim just a small margin off the front, but I like this slightly curving shape in the back. And then you always want to make sure that you have at least 1 inch on either side that's going to tuck underfoot, because that's going to hold all of your glue. So if you had a different shoe size than me and you didn't quite have 1 inch, you might retrace it on that extra paper and just add a little bit of space on either side. So yeah, I think I'll just cut like a tiny bit off this front, and I think I'll keep the toe loop width the way it is. And now I can trace all these onto the leather. So let's start from the bottom and move towards the top. So with the outsoling material, this kind of dense foamy rubber, we want a right and a left. But beyond just tracing it, it's really better to give it a little extra space. So I give it a halo of about 1 centimeter. So I just trace it overly large like this, because this is going to make it so much easier when you place the upper onto the rubber, so that you don't, misplace it and have to re-glue it or anything like that. And then we'll trim it when we're all done. So there's the left. Of course, flip the pattern, fit it in where you can, but do not trace 2 lefts or 2 rights. Great, and you might even label it right and left. And just double check. I got a right, flip, I got a left. Okay, I'm going to set that aside till later. And I'm going to do the same onto the thick footbed leather, so the top of the sole. I want a right and a left. So I'll start and get one here. This one you can trace accurately. And don't forget to flip the pattern. I swear it happens so often. Please don't be upset or embarrassed if you forget. And then for your upper pieces, your straps, you're going to trace it onto the upper leather. And even though they might be symmetrical, it's a really good habit to be in to flip your pattern. So trace one like this and one like this. And make sure you have space to get all of your pieces. So try to be kind of clever about how you fit these into the hide and avoid any huge holes or marks or scars or anything. Keeping in mind that these 1-inch tabs on the side will probably be underfoot, so you actually can drift into the less desirable leather in those areas. For something straight and geometric like this, I might actually just use my straight edge against a straight line and just slice that out without tracing all around and cutting all the sides. Like, I'll just strip out and then cut 2 segments, you know? So for my first piece, also I should note that leather doesn't really have a strong grain. You don't have to trace them both the same way, although it can be a good idea to take your similar pieces from the same part of the hide. So you wouldn't want to take one main strap from the top of a huge hide and one from the bottom, because they would stretch differently. So maybe I'll get these 2, like one from here and one from here. I wanted to show that you can use this pattern against a straight line and put your straight edge here. There we go. And you can just cut it without outlining at all. Do a light pass, heavier pass, make sure it's long enough. And then you have your strip, and then you can avoid a lot of outlining and cutting off the lines. Or I also wanted to show you that you can use your pattern on dark leathers, and a scratch awl will make a nice clear defined line, and also a pencil will. So anything shows up on the dark except for dark pens. So if your knife is sharp, you can probably cut through your upper leather in one pass. But you can also just do a very light pass, just as if you're drawing, just to lay down the line with more control, and then go back with more weight and get through that way. Also, scissors works to cut this leather too. The most important thing is just to remove your pen line from the very beginning. Instead of, if you were to cut right on the line, you're gonna have to recut the entire thing within a closer margin. So might as well just eliminate the line from the beginning and not have to recut it. Even if you take off an extra few millimeters, like, you won't miss it. Okay. So now I'm going to cut through the thick footbed leather. This will take several passes at a time. And for this one, I think you can cut right on the line or right within the line. The reason in this case you can cut on the line is at the very end we are going to go around the top edge and just bevel the edge, so you'd probably lose the pen line then. but do whatever you want. This is a little more forgiving. So for the first pass, I just lay down the line. And see how I'm kind of using my pinky as a little guide, as like a balancing thing. And I'm holding the knife here, not holding it back here, not holding it like this. I'm holding it like a pencil. And my whole hand is grounded. It's not hovering. So those will be helpful tips. And then you can just go straight off of your piece. And then I'll go in with more weight this time. Like that. Almost through. Okay. And then you're just gonna keep doing that, sloping cuts, removing your pen line, but not cutting too much away because you don't want the sole shape to shrink. So now I'm just gonna rough cut these out, and because we made that big halo line, this doesn't even need to be very accurate. It can just be anywhere on or around this line. But this stuff is kind of hard to cut. You'll have to do a few passes, maybe 2. I guess I can't emphasize enough that this just doesn't need to be very well done. Like, we're gonna trim this down to size later, so you're just getting these big rough sole shapes cut out. All right, now that I have everything cut out, I can start playing with the pieces on my foot. So I'm just gonna do one foot at a time. And you want to place your foot so you just have, you know, a centimeter behind your heel here and centimeter at least around your big toe. And then you can just drape the upper pieces and find where they look best. I'll start with the toe loop. Just gonna wiggle this into place like that. And let's see, we don't need to get the tightness correct yet. We're just working on the placement of where we want the strap to land. And we're probably gonna give it a little bit of toe curve. So I think that's nice. You don't want it like so tight in the crevice of your toes that it's uncomfortable. You wanna, you know, nudge it off that crevice just a teeny bit. But this is looking pretty good. Yeah. And remember, one side flips under the toe and the other flips out. All right, so now that I've found the spot where I like where the toe strap is landing, I'm going to mark it with my awl. And you want to put a little dot where the edge of the strap hits the footbed. And you never want this, you want to mark your dots about 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch away from the outside of the sole. so that there's like a healthy peninsula of leather that's going to hold the glue on the outside. So I just marked that one. Let's see. I see all 4 dots and they're close enough tucked in away from the outside edge. That looks good to me. So now I'm going to place this strap and find the sweet spot where this looks best. And I like it there. It could go forward. Let's see. No, that looks weird. I think I like it back here. Yeah, right about there. So I still have a whole inch on either side. That's good. And then I'll just reach over and mark those dots. Again, 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch away from the outside of the sole edge. And I know it's hard to hold this strap with one hand while you mark the dots, but just do your best and kind of correct for it later. So I got all my dots, and then we'll punch those out with the hole punch. Okay, now I can see all my dots, and I'm going to punch them all out with that hole punch on the very smallest setting. If it's not on that, just rotate it around until it is, like that. And then it helps to put a little bit of scrap on the back of whatever you're hole punching. It protects the tool, and it also makes it so this passes through the leather and you don't have to like pull out the little leather that it tried to cut out. So I'll show you. Scrap on the back. Like that. And if ever your holes are a little close to the edge, just scoot them in. And if they're too inward, like maybe that one is, I might scoot it out just a touch. And if for some reason you can't reach all the way into these inside holes, you can just use your awl by forcing it through. So I'm going to try that. Like that. And that'll be wide enough for us to cut our slot. So you know how I only did that draping on my foot thing on one of my feet? That's because I'd rather just take the marks on one foot and apply them to the other rather than taking potentially really different marks from each foot. So now that I have these holes cut out, I can put it face to face on this sole and use my awl to just direct these dots onto the second sole. And then I'll punch those out. So now that you have all of your holes punched out, we're going to turn these dots into little slots. And by that I mean I'm going to connect the dots with 2 lines. And you can draw those with a pen, a pencil, an awl, but 2 parallel lines that are going from the outside of this hole to the outside of that hole. And that'll just be a guide to tell us where to cut. And you want your lines to be the same width as the holes themselves, so about 2 or 3 millimeters. And then I'll show you how to cut those. So hold your knife like I told you, like a pencil, and just enter the tip of the knife point into that first hole. And the first pass is just very light, like you're drawing. And I'm just going to pull towards the other hole, but I'm going to stop short, okay? Then you do it again, deeper. And then a third time, but each time you stop short. And then I'm going to do the parallel one on the other side. So the knife point on the other side of the dot, And just drawing very lightly, stopping short. Deeper, and then all the way through, but still stopping short. Then I'm gonna flip this around and we're gonna do the same thing and just meet up with the lines that you started. This way you have total control and you're pulling the line away from the dot instead of trying to land on the dot, which is really hard and almost impossible. So knife point in the one side of the dot, and then pulling towards the line, meeting up with your line, same over here. Like that. And then you should be able to pull that whole strip of leather out. And even if your lines look kind of mangled and unstraight, it won't really matter, because once we put your strap leather into the slot, you don't really see the inside, you don't see the outside. It's much more forgiving than it first seems like. So I'm going to keep cutting all the slots. The short ones are a little trickier because you have to stop almost as soon as you begin. But still do that thing where you stop short. If you have a little oblong oval shaped punch, like a hand tool punch, that is a really good use for this spot on this style. But I don't have one here. So I started those two. Let's see. Sometimes it needs a little help. But yeah, that worked. So do that to all of the different dots and just be sure to connect the correct dots and not the wrong dots. I wanted to mention that some of your slots that you draw, they're meant to kind of slope with the sides of the sole. So like this one's pretty straight, but this one would not be stick straight. This one would kind of arc along with that contour of the arch. So just kind of gently sloping. I just don't know if I mentioned that before, so. Now that you have all of your slots cut out, let's try pulling all the uppers into place. In a lot of cases, it will go in just fine, like that, but sometimes it might be a really tight squeeze. So in that instance, I just cut the strap more at an angle, and then you're able to just send a corner in and be able to pull it on the other side. Pliers can help. Okay, and then for this, sometimes just forcing it and then backing it into place is the best way. Just like that. And don't worry if the strap is not wide enough for the slot or is too wide, because you probably intended it to sit at an angle where it does fulfill the slot. So we'll work on that in the next step. I'm going to pull the next one into place and then slide it onto my foot and start taping the bottom to get the fit right. Okay, so then it's best to get somewhere where you can kick one foot over your other knee and slide on your shoe as it is so far. And great, I'm pretty happy. I'm glad I didn't do the sole any smaller than I did, because already I'm like, Okay, so we're gonna start by just taping it kind of how it lands and then just correcting from there. So like I pointed out before, this side of the toe is gonna tuck this way and this side's gonna flip the opposite way. And I like to use one piece of tape for each tab so that you can adjust them independently of one another. If you just used one big piece of tape to tape everything, it would be really hard to do these like small adjustments. So, and try to get the upper strap to fulfill that whole slot length so that there's no gaps on the top. So I'm just gonna make sure it's filling that whole slot. Tape that. There. You have to like force the tape to work. And then I might put my weight on it too. So here's my initial tape job. I just kind of force the tape to stick. It doesn't always want to do a great job sticking. And here's the top. I'm going to kind of fold the leather to encourage it to stand upright. And then I'm going to slide it on just like this and see what needs adjustments. So let's see. I guess I'd like a little bit more room right here, although that will kind of stretch over time, but I think it's a little snug. And then I do feel it right in here, so I might just change the angle to let that relax a little bit. So to make this a little roomier here, you're basically just peeling up the tape back here and letting this out a little. So let's see. You can really force the leather to do exactly what you want it to do. Just pull that out and then retape it. Same with over here, just give it a few extra millimeters in the back, but leave the front part as is. And let's see if that made a little difference. Yeah, I think I did create more room in the back, and I like how the front's fitting. Now I want to work on that little inside part. Kind of just going to try to change the angle. So this piece, I'm going to angle down. So it's not just how deep you pull all these, it has a lot of, the angle that you pull these has a lot to do with how it fits. Oh, I think part of the problem could be this overlap here, so I'm going to trim that back. Okay, so it was that overlap spot, I think that was bugging me. So now that I trimmed that away, it's much more comfortable and I'm happy with it. And I guess the rule for the toe loop should be, you should be able to slide in really easily, and any small discomfort will just go away with a few wears and once you stretch the leather to fit how you need it. But my rule for bigger straps like this is I should be able to wiggle one finger in, but not two and not zero. So you want just like a little bit of extra space, but not too much. So I'm happy with this one. Now I can work on taping the second one in the same exact way, or I'll show you this other trick I use. So now that you have one taped up and you're happy with it, I want to show you how to outline where everything's landing, mark it if it's right or left, and then apply those lines to the other shoe. It's a way to make sure they fit the same way without having to tape it again, I guess. So you're just going to very carefully remove the tape, but keep each tab like laying down exactly where you had it. And then you just want to get all the outlines of where it lands, including a little outline right where it protrudes from the slot. In case it falls out or moves or shifts, you'll know exactly where to put it back to. And since this shoe is the right shoe, I'm going to put a little R on every tab. And sometimes a this way up arrow really helps you later on. You can barely see it, but so I'm going to do that to all of these, and then I'll show you the next part. Okay, so this is what I meant by having all of your outlines drawn. It's very clear. If they shift out of place, I know where to put it. And they all have the letter R with an arrow this way up towards the toes in case I get confused later. Because now I'm going to show you, I'll just take out this little toe loop strap. And I'm going to keep the right one on, right one on the right and the left one on the left. And I want to make these mirror opposites. So you kind of have to pretend like everything has to flip like pages of a book. So for this line, I'm going to pull the line to the edges and just roll it over onto the edges. And then this line is in the back. And I'm going to do the same. I'm going to bring it over to the edges. Cool. Okay, so now I'm going to move them like pages of the book like this. And first I'm just going to cut them so that they're down the same size. So I'm going to take down the larger piece so it resembles this piece. Okay, and then I'm going to do that mirroring thing again like this. And this time, now that they're the same exact shape, I can take those side lines and apply them to the new piece. Like that. This is where the right and left come in handy because I'm like, which one is which? I think it's like this. Okay, so now I have the side lines on the new piece. I can connect them. They're just straight lines. So I'm going to kind of peek around the edge and connect these two. And this one, of course, is the left, this way up. And then on the back side, there's the line. Here's my side lines, connecting those. This is the left, this side up. So now I can put the right one back in the right to this depth and this depth, and same over here, and they should fit exactly the same this way. Hey, the sun's coming out. So I mirrored all the straps onto the left, and I outlined where some of them landed. And now I think it's a good idea to just quickly tape the second one and try it on and make sure it's doing what you want it to do before we scratch and glue, which is the next step. So I'm going to tape it, check it, and then move on. All right, so here's the other one, and it looks good to me. Maybe I can make it a little tighter in the front, but that's the only thing I would change right now. And we can always correct after we do the first stage of gluing, because we're going to glue it, stick it together, try them both on at the same time, and make sure that they're perfect before we hammer. So I'm just going to make this a tiny bit tighter in front and then move on to scratching and gluing. Okay, so now you want to use your scratch all to create texture everywhere we're going to glue these tabs down. So texture meaning cross-hatching, two directions, because the leather glue doesn't like to bond to really slick leather, so you just want to rough it up. So that means all down here and the bottom of the tabs themselves, all here and here. So I'll work on that for a little bit. Okay, since I finished up all the scratching, I'm ready to glue. And of course I have to use this glue outside where there's some wind and ventilation. So here we are outside. And the way this glue works is you just put it on all the surfaces you want to adhere, so both the sole and the bottoms of the tabs. And then you're going to leave it open kind of like this for 5 minutes or maybe even 10 minutes until the glue is tacky. And the idea is you would put your finger on it and the glue would not come away on your finger, then it's ready to join. So I'll show you the amount I like to use. It's been 5 minutes and the glue is not coming off on my finger, so I'm going to try joining these. Just follow your own outlines. Okay, just tried them on to make sure they fit, and to make sure they fit the same as each other. And I think they're definitely the same as each other. It might help to use a measuring tape to measure a few of the spots if you're unsure, but you can just use your feeling too. There's a little extra space here, but I might keep it. If you did want to correct something like that, you would just slide them off, peel this up. You might need to shove an awl under there to like really get the glue to separate. Oh, it's happening. and then you would just pull it a tiny bit more in towards there, but leave this spot as it is. And then check it before you redo the whole glue process over again, so you can just stick it down temporarily. Oh, I do like that better, so maybe I'll correct both of them in that same way, and I'll just add more glue to that one spot, and then we'll hammer. So I re-glued these parts of the back that I wanted tighter, and I'm just ready to stick it together now. So for this particular sandal, there's only a few spots where you even can reach with a hammer. I would say like back here. And this extension part of the tab here. But that'll help a lot. And then with the other areas, you can just massage it with your fingertips. And then lastly, I'll slide these onto my feet and use my own body weight to compress the layers. Alright, so now we get to address the fact that there's this unevenness underfoot, and I should say the place where your foot lands the hardest on the sole is the ball of your heel and around the ball of the toes. So we're going to do something called skiving, which is shaving the leather to be thinner so that you don't feel the transition between the tabs and the sole. So I'll demonstrate. But yeah, I like to roll the knife about 4 blades longer than normal, and you're going to get the left hand out of the way by actually like supporting from below what you're going to cut. So it's a matter of like constantly repositioning the shoe to give you the best access to each area. And of course you're going to just take down all these edges, but you're never going to cut this strip here, because that's the most important to keep that strong. We're just beveling the edges. So I like to work in my lap against my own body like this. I know it seems counterintuitive, but I think you have more control when you're pulling towards yourself rather than pushing away. And I'm using the low part of the blade and just shaving it gradually so that you won't feel that transition at all, and just rearranging the shoe so that you can pull these strips off. And see how I'm using my left hand underneath to support what I'm cutting, but my hand's out of the way. Just like that. I'm done skiving, so everything feels pretty smooth. I wanted to show you how carefully I skived the toe areas, because it's kind of hard when you're cutting this one not to cut this one, but you can do it, just be really patient. And then I do this thing called the Princess and the Pea test, where I just try them on and close my eyes and stand on a flat surface and try to feel if there's any irritation or bumps or lumps that need more attention, and then I skive those. So now I'm just going to scratch everything. One more thing about scratching is you want to give especially a lot of scratching to the outside edge, like these little peninsulas and all around here, because that's the spot that would eventually start to gap off the sole if it wasn't glued super well. So just don't skimp on the scratching around the edge. Okay, now I'm finally applying all the glue to the tops of the outsoles and the bottoms of the uppers. And it's important to apply it all the way to the very edge. Even if the outsole's overly large, you just want to give yourself a lot of space to, I don't know, place it wherever it wants to land. So it is a good idea to do a second coat of glue. Once the first coat gets tacky, it'll just make it such a stronger bond, and that's a good trick to do whenever you're using synthetic components. So I'm going to do that now. Okay. I'm ready to join the layers together, and you want to do this in a very managed way, not just haphazardly stick them together, but I like to bend it kind of like this, and I'm going to hover it over the soling and only let the ball of the toe, so the widest part of the toe area, to touch while I'm holding the rest off of it, the base here. And then I'm going to pull the toe up like a lot, like a whole inch or so, to create a little bit of toe spring. And then I'm going to use that same technique to do some arch lift. So kind of exaggerate a curve in the arch and bring the rubber up to meet it. And you're kind of creating contrast by pushing all the areas around the arch down while you pull the arch part up. And the arch is like the middle one-third of the shoe, but a hair back. So once you get those little lifted areas, you want to go around the entire thing and just press it together really well and pinch all the layers together. And make sure your little strips of leather are tight against the slots, not gapping outward. Okay, so we have a little resulting toe spring, a little bit of lift in the arch, and I'll do the other one. Okay, like before, I'm only going to let the ball of the toe, the widest part, touch first. And then I'm going to bring the rubber up like that, so it kind of holds at this raised zone. And then I'm going to create a little bit of a curve in the arch if I can by bringing that up and pressing all the areas around it down at the same time. I have to admit that this rubber soling is extra thick, so it's way harder than normal to manipulate, so I didn't get much of an arch there, but you get the idea. And then you go around pinching all the layers, especially around that outside edge, so that they're very secure. And then I'm going to put my feet into these and stomp on them to make sure the connection is really strong. Okay, so now you have these almost completed sandals with this extra lip of rubber all around, and they look silly. So we're gonna carve this off, and of course if you're feeling scared about that, you can just put them on your cutting surface and use the knife and just cut it from above like this. But I feel like there's a better way, which is rolling the knife out sort of long and holding the sandal against your chest. At least this is how I like to do it. And you just enter the blade perpendicular to the sandal like this. And then you're just going to slowly and steadily pull this knife all the way around. I will show you how I do it. And then you can just follow along with the shape of the footbed, kind of just gliding using the footbed as your guide. And it's so important to keep the knife perpendicular and don't over slope inward. I started to do that a little bit here, but oh well, it's not so bad. But yeah, you can get a very clear edge. I don't know if you can see how smooth that cut is, but it's almost better than sanding sometimes. But you just have to be aware that every time you hesitate with the knife, it will leave a tiny, tiny little mark. So like I started to hesitate at the end here and it left a little bit of lines, but it's pretty clean. And I'll do it again. I'll show you again with the other sandal. But yeah, and then the final thing is we're gonna trim this top edge after that. I keep feeling like I'm saying one more thing, but the very last thing is I do like to trim the top edge, and I think scissors are best to do just the round parts like the toe and the heel, and then a knife is best for the long side edges because you can't get a scissors into the side very easily. But I just take off barely anything and at a 45-degree angle, and it just helps make it look a little bit more finished. But try to err on the taking less rather than more off. And just work your way all the way around. And carry that same beveled line down the sides with your knife. If your knife is dull at this point, you might want to chip some blades off and start with a really fresh part of the blade. Okay, and one last thing is, depending on how well you cut off the extra rubber, if it's a little choppy and you don't like how not smooth it is, you can bring your sandals to a cobbler who will have them, they'll sand them professionally for probably around $20. That's a great way to have the edges finished. Or you can buy a sander. for about $100 and do it at home, a tabletop electric belt sander. That's the only type I would recommend. But yeah, both ways are really great for evening out all the sole layers, and then you would do this top trimming process, and then you're totally done. Okay, so the good news is they fit me correctly. They're very comfortable. I wanted to mention one thing about the way this glue works. The more contact with the shoes, the more you can put your weight in them, the better the glue will work. So if you finish your project, you should wear them right away if you can. Don't stick them in a closet for a year, because that would be bad for the adhesion. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the process, and please email me if you have any questions.